Broadsword calling Danny Boy. This is Major Smith. Over and out. Where Eagles Dare wasn't just a heroic World War II adventure, it was a storm of chaos, ambition, and danger, an alpine fortress built on ice, literal treachery behind the camera, and a cast that sometimes fought more off-screen than on. From snowblind stunts to drunken disappearances and near mishaps that could have ended careers, this film hid more than its secret agent twists. Today, you're getting 20 weird facts about Where Eagles Dare, and stick around for the bonus fact that'll blow even hardcore fans away. Ready your parachutes, because we're diving in. The rocket-fueled Genesis. Where Eagles Dare didn't begin as a standard novel adaptation, it was the adaptation. Producer Elliot Kastner approached author Alistair MacLean with a wild idea. Write a screenplay first, then a novel from it. MacLean, famous for tight plotting, had just 6 weeks to deliver both. The result was a simultaneous creation, a movie conceived on the page even before it hit print. Every twist, double cross, and coded transmission was mapped out with clockwork precision. But this speed came at a cost. There was no time for rewrites, no studio polish. Cast and crew would later discover pages arriving during production, new dialogue taped to camera rigs just before shooting. Burton and Eastwood had to memorize lines while freezing in the Alps. The urgency you feel watching the film, the ticking clock, the relentless pace wasn't a stylistic choice. It was real, a race against time, both on-screen and off. The film's pulse came from its own impossible deadline, fiction and production, fused into one breathtaking sprint toward completion. Billing battle and compensation surprise. Behind the camera, the war was financial. Clint Eastwood was already rising fast in Hollywood thanks to Sergio Leone's westerns, yet Richard Burton was still a commanding global name. MGM wanted Burton top billed, Eastwood second, and Eastwood's agents pushed hard for fair pay. He ultimately earned $800,000, an enormous figure for 1968, but still less than Burton's million-plus salary. Eastwood privately called the script terrible, all exposition and complications, preferring action to dialogue. So he negotiated fewer lines, focusing instead on stoic presence. Burton, ever the theater man, dominated the speeches. Their contrasting approaches created genuine tension that the camera unknowingly captured, one cold and efficient, the other dramatic and verbal. When the credits rolled, egos survived only just. Eastwood later admitted he took the role mainly for European exposure, not passion. The power struggle between two stars mirrored their characters' silent competition, a clash of style, pay, and pride playing out on icy mountaintops. Death by wire and mountain mayhem. Those breathtaking climbs up the fortress wall weren't studio tricks. Crews shot in freezing Austrian air where harnesses stiffened and ice formed on cables. Clint Eastwood performed several real ascents, using hidden scaffolds while the camera disguised the supports. Richard Burton, hampered by heavy costumes and injuries, was sometimes lifted by a concealed crane. Stuntman Alf Joint took the most dangerous moments, especially the cable car fight, during which he lost 3 teeth when a mistimed fall slammed him into metal. Safety measures were primitive compared to modern standards. No digital wire removal, no soft crash pads buried in the snow. Even the castle facade was slick with frost, making every grip a gamble. Director Brian G. Hutton pushed for authenticity, insisting that the audience feel the altitude. The result? One of the most convincing and hazardous stunt sequences of the 1960s. Every frame of calm heroism came at real cost. Danger wasn't simulated, it was endured in silence and snow. A real gun threat in a hotel lobby. When you dress world-famous actors in Nazi uniforms and send them into post-war Europe, trouble is inevitable. During shooting in Salzburg, Richard Burton experienced it firsthand. Still in full SS uniform after a late shoot, he walked into a hotel lobby for a drink, and a local man, mistaking him for an actual German officer, drew a revolver on him. Crew members and security rushed in before anyone was hurt. The shaken Burton later joked that, "For a moment, I thought the war had started again." The incident served as a reminder that memories of World War II were still raw in 1968 Austria, and that costume and reality could dangerously blur. The production tightened set security afterward, banning actors from leaving locations in costume. The tension of the film's espionage wasn't confined to the script for a few heart-stopping minutes. Its lead actor truly lived it. Snow, avalanches, and alpine headaches. Hohenwerfen Castle, the film's main location, stood like a frozen crown amid Austria's mountains, picturesque but punishing. The crew battled temperatures below freezing, blizzards that buried camera gear, and avalanches that delayed filming for days. Helicopters carrying film stock sometimes couldn't take off, forcing the team to hand-carry exposed reels down icy slopes. Transporting heavy lighting equipment up winding mountain roads became a logistical nightmare. Locals nicknamed the production Hollywood on the Glacier. Yet director Brian Hutton refused studio suggestions to recreate scenes indoors. He wanted authenticity breath visible, snow crunching under boots, wind howling against microphones. The realism is undeniable. You can practically feel the cold in every frame. The beauty of those sweeping snow vistas hides weeks of misery, exhaustion, and frostbite, proof that cinematic grandeur often comes at the price of human comfort, vehicles of history and tragedy. That stately tri-engine transport aircraft seen early in the film wasn't a mock-up. It was a real Junkers Ju-52 on loan from the AD Swiss Air Force. The plane, serial number A702, had served since the 1930s and was repainted with German markings for filming. Decades later, in 2018, it tragically crashed in Switzerland during a sightseeing flight, killing all 20 aboard. For aviation historians, the connection is chilling. A craft that once played a part in a fictional war ultimately became part of a real tragedy. During the shoot, the Ju-52 endured difficult takeoffs from icy runways and turbulent mountain air. Pilots called it temperamental at altitude. The aircraft's later fate reminds us that props and machinery in cinema carry real histories and sometimes heartbreaking futures. Stand-in overload. Where Doubles Dared. Clint Eastwood once quipped that the movie should have been titled Where Doubles Dared, and he wasn't wrong. Between snow, altitude, and elaborate stunts, almost every actor needed a stand-in. Alf Joint performed most of Burton's dangerous work, while stunt legends Paul Weston and Vic Armstrong handled key cable car fights and jumps for Eastwood. Even extras were replaced mid-scene when injuries occurred. Despite that, Eastwood insisted on doing as much as insurance allowed, performing several rooftop maneuvers himself. Shooting required precise coordination. One mistake meant thousands of feet of wasted film. The doubles were unsung heroes, sometimes working through nights in freezing conditions. The public saw 2 stars defying death. The truth is, dozens of professionals quietly dared it, for them earning no fame, only bruises, Nazi uniforms, and haunted memories. For actress Ingrid Pitt, wearing a Nazi uniform on set was personal torment. Born in Poland and imprisoned as a child during World War II, Pitt had survived real atrocities. When wardrobe fitted her with an SS jacket for her role, she reportedly froze. Castmates later recalled her taking deep breaths before each scene, reminding herself it was only a film. Director Hutton and co-star Mary Ure offered quiet support, adjusting call times to help her cope. Yet Pitt delivered a performance full of poise and fire. Her real-life history lent gravity to her character's defiance, even in pulp adventure surroundings. Sometimes the bravest performance isn't the one that thrills audiences. It's the one that faces down memories no one should ever relive. Script to scene. Divergences you never noticed. While Alistair MacLean's novel and screenplay share the same skeleton, their bones bend differently. In the book, the mission begins in England. In the film, it's already airborne. The novel's climax happens in a cable car crash, but the movie expands it into a multi-stage escape. Even names change. In print, certain characters die who survive on film. Why? Pace and clarity. MGM wanted constant motion, no pauses for introspection. So MacLean, ever pragmatic, rewrote his own material for the screen, cutting pages of inner monologue and tightening dialogue to match director Hutton's clockwork thriller vision. The film's brisk rhythm owes everything to that ruthless streamlining. Adaptation isn't betrayal, it's evolution. The book plotted a mission. The movie made it move like a bullet. Eastwood's reluctant mission. Clint Eastwood didn't leap at this role. He thought the script was wordy and confusing, but his agent argued that acting opposite Richard Burton would elevate his career. Eastwood agreed with one condition: fewer lines, more action. Director Hutton obliged, turning him into the silent counterbalance to Burton's theatrical command. Ironically, audiences loved Eastwood's minimalist approach, praising his cool efficiency. Meanwhile, Burton's verbosity anchored the complex plot. Their chemistry worked because of contrast, not harmony. On set, Burton reportedly teased Eastwood for his economy of words, to which Clint replied, "Someone's got to survive this mission." Eastwood entered grudgingly and left legendary, proving that sometimes indifference can craft the most enduring icon. Double Agent one-upmanship. Casting for Where Eagles Dare mirrored its espionage theme, full of secret substitutions. Early drafts listed Richard Egan as the American agent and Trevor Howard as the British major. Burton's influence reshuffled everything, insisting on Eastwood after seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Behind the scenes, there were further negotiations over who got which uniform, which weapon, even who fired the final shot. The competitiveness wasn't malicious, just ego meeting altitude. The crew joked that they had 2 generals, no privates. Yet that friction energized the film's dynamic, giving every exchange a subtle edge. The movie's tension feels real because it was a duel of pride that sharpened every line of dialogue. Real injuries, real consequences. Actor Darren Nesbitt, who played the icy Gestapo officer Major von Happen, nearly lost his sight filming his death scene. A small explosive charge, a squib misfired, shooting debris upward into his face. Production halted as medics rushed in. He spent days recovering, wearing dark glasses to protect his eyes. Decades later, he said, "It was the one time I didn't have to act pain, it was already there." Effects crews recalibrated all subsequent explosions, reducing powder loads. Today, the moment plays out in seconds, but behind that single shot lies a sobering reminder of analog filmmaking's risks. Pain captured on film isn't always performance. Sometimes it's the residue of the craft itself. Cold drinks, warmer tempers. Richard Burton's legendary drinking shadowed the entire production. Locals whispered that he could empty 4 bottles of vodka in a day, though friends insisted the number was exaggerated. Still, his condition worried director Hutton, who scheduled dialogue scenes early before fatigue set in. Elizabeth Taylor, visiting occasionally, tried to curb him by threatening to leave Austria altogether. Crew accounts vary. Some say he delivered perfectly even after long nights. Others recall slurred takes. Whatever the truth, his weary eyes and measured tone arguably helped the performance, reflecting a man carrying invisible weight. Behind Burton's commanding presence was a fragile humanity, proof that brilliance often walks a fine line with breakdown. A castle with no cable car. The movie's defining image, a castle connected by perilous cable cars, was pure invention. Hohenwerfen Castle had no such system. The production built partial models and shot aerial footage in Werfen Valley, then spliced it with miniature work from Pinewood Studios. Model units constructed tiny cars on fine steel threads, filming against painted backdrops that fooled audiences into believing they were real alpine crossings. Even today, the illusion holds up under HD restoration. Locals were baffled when fans arrived years later asking to ride the famous cable car. Movie magic can reshape geography, reminding us that what seems tangible may exist only in the camera's lens. A fortress with a falconry today. Long after the camera stopped rolling, Hohenwerfen Castle found new life. The medieval fortress, once echoing with prop gunfire, now hosts daily falconry shows and medieval fairs. Visitors can stand on the same parapets where Eastwood and Burton traded gunfire, overlooking valleys once filled with lighting cranes. Many tour guides still reference the movie, recounting tales of crew tents buried in snow and power cables snapping in wind. The castle's tourism boom owes much to the film's legacy. Local economies still benefit decades later. Fiction transformed heritage, a real castle, forever branded by an imagined war, merging art and history into one enduring landmark. The music that underscored the mission. Composer Ron Goodwin's score deserves its own medal. Tasked with matching snowbound suspense to orchestral intensity, he built a theme heavy on brass and snare drums, evoking both military precision and looming dread. Goodwin recorded in London with a 90-piece orchestra, layering echoes to mimic mountain acoustics. The opening march became instantly recognizable, bold, relentless, like boots crunching through snow. Critics at the time called it the last great war film overture. Decades later, directors still cite it as the sonic blueprint for high-stakes thrillers. The music doesn't just accompany the mission, it is the mission disciplined, perilous, and unforgettable, a legacy favorite of Spielberg. Where Eagles Dare didn't just impress audiences, it captivated filmmakers. Among its biggest admirers is Steven Spielberg, who has repeatedly listed it among his all-time favorite war films. In interviews, he called it the perfect boys' own adventure, a masterclass in pacing, tension, and precision editing. Spielberg said he studied Brian G. Hutton's direction while preparing Raiders of the Lost Ark, noting how Eagles balanced realism and spectacle without losing credibility. The film's seamless blend of espionage and action influenced how Spielberg later shot the rope bridge sequence in Temple of Doom and the U-boat scenes in Raiders. What fascinated him most was how every obstacle felt earned, no luck, no coincidence, just planning and peril. Critics who once dismissed it as pulp later re-evaluated it as one of the sharpest war thrillers ever made, largely because visionary directors like Spielberg elevated its reputation. The movie that once left its cast freezing and frustrated became a blueprint for future blockbusters, proof that greatness doesn't always announce itself on opening day. Sometimes it takes another master to point and say, "That's how it's done." The body count. That shocked Nin1968. By the time the credits rolled, more than 100 men had fallen on film, that is. For 1968 audiences, Where Eagles Dare was unusually violent for its genre. Every few minutes brought another firefight, another explosion, another avalanche of casualties. Critics were startled. This wasn't a tidy, patriotic war picture. It was relentless, mechanical, almost cold in its precision. Director Brian Hutton argued that it had to be that way. If you want realism, you can't shy away from the cost. Each shot, each fall into snow, each shattering window served the story's pulse efficiency over sentiment. MGM worried about censorship, trimming several shots for early releases, but audiences didn't mind. They loved the unflinching momentum. The film's high body count actually influenced later war epics to increase their realism, paving the way for grittier depictions like Cross of Iron and eventually Saving Private Ryan. Hidden inside the body-strewn finale is a moral paradox. A film meant for thrills dared to remind its audience that every mission, no matter how daring, leaves ghosts behind. How they filmed snowbound explosions. Creating explosions that look spectacular in snow is a logistical nightmare. Heat melts your set, white surfaces reflect too much light, and timing becomes critical. The effects team behind Where Eagles Dare engineered solutions worthy of the military precision they were portraying. To keep snow from vanishing under blast heat, they mixed chalk dust, sawdust, and flour into miniature detonations, a technique that mimicked powdery snowfall. The production shot some explosions outdoors in the Austrian Alps, but others were miniatures built in Pinewood Studios, complete with tiny cable cars and cotton clouds. Synchronizing them with live-action footage required exacting math. Every miniature charge had to match the real-world timing of actors jumping or firing. When the cable car explodes mid-air, what you're seeing is a perfect blend. Half full-scale set, half miniature, all practical. Not one frame of computer enhancement existed. It was pure craftsmanship. Those fiery bursts against white, silence weren't just spectacle. They were the heartbeat of handmade cinema, back when imagination and precision mattered more than pixels. Changing names, changing fates. Fans who read Alistair MacLean's novel before watching the film often find themselves disoriented. And that's no accident. MGM intentionally altered character names and plot turns to sharpen suspense for moviegoers. Ted Berkeley in the film was Edward Caraciola in the book. Major Von Happen replaced Captain Von Brauchitsch. Entire personalities shifted, loyal allies became traitors, and vice versa. McLean himself approved every change, arguing that a movie breathes differently than a book. He worked alongside the filmmakers to compress his complex espionage story into 2.5 hours of screen tension. By the final cut, only about 60% of the novel remained. Even the order of deaths was shuffled to surprise readers. These alterations weren't disrespectful, they were surgical, designed to heighten cinematic rhythm. The result was a film leaner, faster, and far more unpredictable than its literary source. The novel gave Where Eagles Dare its soul, but the film gave it flight proof that transformation, not imitation, is what makes art endure. Where Eagles Dare wasn't just a cinematic ride, it was a collision of mountains, ego, history, and human endurance. Behind the glinting area of Broadsword Calling Danny Boy lay arrests of filming, near accidents, fractured nights, and raw physical challenge. Yet the legacy endured, and today, the film still thrills new generations, partly because it achieved what it set out to do, partly because we now know how much it almost didn't. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden engine of Where Eagles Dare, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next behind the scenes drop. Remember, the Eagles dared, and so did we.